Technologies which were earlier only meant for enterprises now have found their relevance and wide usage in the healthcare sector. In the past decade, we saw technology pervade healthcare to initiate services like telemedicine, e-pharmacy, personal health management, home healthcare, and others. But both providers and consumers were slow to adopt these services. Things, however, changed drastically when the pandemic hit us. It caused seismic shifts in healthcare, delivery, and consumption by pushing providers and consumers over the tipping point into widespread adoption of these services. To discuss the disruption in the Indian healthcare system post-COVID, we have with us today Mr. Dheeraj Jain, founder, Redcliffe Life Diagnostics, Mr. J.P. Dwivedi, CIO, Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute, and Mr. Gautam Chopra, CEO and co-founder, BeatO. The panel discussion will be moderated by Sunil Rajguru, editor, PC Quest and CIOL.
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this latest session in the PCQ Health Tech event. Today's forum is titled Disruption in the Indian Healthcare System Post-COVID. Now, I think all of us are familiar with the way COVID unfolded. It was a great disruption of our life. It was a great disruption in our way of living. And while the COVID disrupted the healthcare system, one thing which came to the rescue was technology. Technology gave us a lot of solutions, but that itself proved to be another disruptor. So I think we will, discuss this disruption in health tech technology. So I think I'll start with you, Mr. Dwivedi. So I'll ask my first question to you. So, telemedicine has been around for quite a long time, but there has been a great reluctance to adopt it from the people, from the doctors, and even from the government regulation point of view. But that is one thing which is finally taking off. And of course, there was an inhibitor in terms of technology. Today, you have the collaboration tools, you have the bandwidth capacity, and more importantly, even in rural areas, everyone has smartphones, the apps are coming up. And finally, there's also a big issue of digital records. So, I mean, when you talk of telemedicine, it encompasses so many issues. So maybe if you could speak a bit about this.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. And it is a delight to be with all of you and share my views with you. You are absolutely right. People have been trying telemedicine for more than a decade. And for so many reasons, and most prominent ones related to either infrastructure or regulatory issues. I mean, whether those prescriptions are really acceptable in the court of law, and whether the telecommunication lines are dependable enough, reliable enough. So all these were problems. But when this pandemic came, I really very fondly narrate one couplet of Bashir Badr Saab to everyone. That was written a few decades ago. जो गले मिलोगे तपाक से कोई हाथ भी न मिलाएगा, ये नए मिजाज का शहर है, जरा फासले से मिला करो. So that came so apt. People were loving distance, and that is how telemedicine kicked off now. So people are consulting doctors from home, and doctors are not very unhappy about the crowd being reduced from their OPDs, and they still being able to contact their patients and talk to them, and non-essential consultations can happen. There are so many aspects of it. Number one is, managing their busy schedule. Why telemedicine was not kicking off? Doctors are busy seeing the patients who are present in person. Now having one integrated schedule is very important. So that was missing. A lot of manual coordination was being there. And one single schedule helps. One single waiting list, that maybe 20 patients are waiting in person and 15 persons are waiting on teleconsult schedule. And they are all seamlessly intermingled. Now, with integrated apps, everything being stored in cloud, all documents available online for reference. That is very much a reality. The other is that island applications, provided by different specific telemedicine providers, and everything being stored on their own cloud, on their own separate island of the data structures. It does not help integrating with the single longitudinal patient record. So that was also the problem. Now with the integration, everything becomes part of a single database, single monolithic system. And in spite of that, still being available to the patients on their PHR, on their mobiles. So that is helping. Patients are able to see their medical records, their reports, their everything, even their bills and visit records. And doctors are able to see everything in a single system, including all the reports and images and previous histories and everything. So it all came together. Whole ecosystem was built in such a way that now doctors are preferring telemedicine. You just touched upon the electronic health record. That was another sore point. Vanilla EMR systems making doctor to make 20-30 clicks in order to enter one single patient record. It will frustrate any reasonable person. So the companies came with solutions with content-rich and context-sensitive EMRs, where only 2 or 3 or 4 clicks can really put up the entire prescription together and can help doctor putting the notes. Certain devices, voice recognition, handwriting recognition coming to the rescue, and doctors not being asked to put up too much of effort creating an EMR, rather doing their business almost as usual and EMR being created. The third thing that helped is that doctors, some of them or many of them got afraid of touching papers, because paper is one big carrier of the viruses and bacteria. So EMR adoption became easy. So in a way, it is a dangerous, deadly thing. But for CIOs, this pandemic actually has been a big brother.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dwivedi. I like that Fastle se mila karo. That has been the story of 2020 and 2021. So I hope ye duriya kam ho jaye in 2022 and we can get back to normal. So, I'd like to now move on to Gautam. That is, Mr. Dwivedi has given it from the point of view of hospitals and telemedicine and records. Now, one thing is the startup industry. Startup industry is usually the youngest and the fastest to react to, such changes. And it comes out with the latest cutting edge technology. So I'd like to know, how has the startup industry reacted to this disruption? And what have been the major trends in the health tech startups? And also mainly, what can we look forward to in the years to come?
Yeah, no, first of all, thanks for that question, Sunil. I think it's a pleasure, to be among such luminaries and having a chat on this important topic with all of you. So like Dwivedi ji, I'm also an eternal optimist. I try to find the positives in every situation. And while COVID unfortunately played havoc, there are a few things that came out of it which make us even more stronger. So for me, when I look at, the last year and a half, Sunil, or more, there were three or four fundamental shifts that have taken place. And especially when you're looking at, tech startups and this new age companies trying to innovate, I think the first and most important thing was on the patient side, as well as, of course, the provider side, but largely to do with the patient side, where, we found three big shifts. One was the overall adoption. I mean, given the fact that, people weren't able to go to the doctors. People had to remote monitor their conditions at home. What was earlier difficult in terms of breaking that barrier of trust on digital solutions became much easier. From the patient adoption side. So that was one fundamental shift. The second, a part of that was also that earlier digital solutions had a problem in terms of एक बार patient आ गया, but उसके बाद engagement used to fall next to nil. What we found, and this is a sustaining fact, that people continue to engage with digital platforms. more than so the retention has increased in terms of the time that they're spending, understanding about their health on various different platforms is a lot higher than what it was before. And the third critical thing that happened, in my view, was the fact that this also provided time for digital solutions to be able to demonstrate that they could make an impact on health outcomes, right? So even providers like us or many other solutions in different therapeutic areas, we were actually able to demonstrate that, digital solutions, when complemented with, of course, a more of a physical approach, but let's say more reliance now having to come in terms of digital solutions, the health impact could be driven through digital solutions as well, which added or contributed to this fact of loyalty by patients becoming more in digital solutions, and therefore driving higher adoption as well as engagement. So this virtuous cycle, or it provided us this time to be able to create a virtuous cycle of trust, both from a patient side as well as Mr. Dwivedi was talking about, from the provider or doctor side. More reliance on digital platforms has started to come. So that's one fundamental shift we've seen from patient adoption, engagement, and provision of health outcomes in their lives. The second thing which has happened is, of course, the regulatory framework has become more relaxed. So, before COVID, there was always a debate on teleconsultation, online pharmacies, etc., etc. But I think during this phase, we really realized that we can't just have, dependence on physical models. We do need to have more robust regulatory, frameworks around digital health solutions, so that they can also come into the mainstream. So they're no longer ancillary. The need has become imminent for them to become mainstream. So that is second. I think the push from the government, the NDHM and so many other initiatives that the government is taking up, coming out with, helped us to be able to formalize what otherwise was, keeping digital solutions away from the mainstream healthcare industry. The third thing for us was all this also had a positive impact, Sunil, in terms of attracting institutional capital into the health tech space. And now, if you look at health tech as well as insurtech, which are dependent on health improvements, you see a flood of capital flowing in, which allows entrepreneurs or young age innovators to be able to take that leap of faith, knowing that there is a market which is evolving, but also there is infrastructure support for me to be able to try out new things and raise a lot more capital, whether this is at seed stage or even at a at a more mature growth stage. So I think it's a culmination of these three factors that allowed the overall impetus into digital solutions, which was coming, but the pace of it just got accelerated over the last year and a half, potentially because of COVID. And what is encouraging for us is that a lot of that is still intact. So even now, when the markets are open, people are out there. Hopefully, I read in the papers today that people are top doctors are saying that maybe the third wave we will be able to escape it in some way. But I think that trend, while it may not be at its peak the way it was during the thick of COVID, it is still there and will continue to sustain, in my view, which is really important for breeding more innovation, beyond just what happened during the phase of COVID, because that's the only way we'll get to reach to 95% of India that lives beyond the top tier cities of Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, etc., where bulk of the impact has to be created through digital health solutions, combined, of course, with the great work that Dwivedi ji and a host of other people are doing.
Anyway, thanks, Gautam. I liked what you said, like that 95%, because I mean, the idea is the healthcare has to reach ultimately 100%.
It has to be inclusive, right? So,
yeah. And Dwivedi, they also said that there has been a change of attitudes. You have also talked of a change in capital flow. So anyway, let's hope we can move forward on that count. Now, Dheeraj, so this was from the point of view of telemedicine, hospitals and startups. So I'd like to ask you about the diagnostics and testing scene. I mean, not many people talk about it, but that is the most important thing, because that is where it all begins. Before you go to a hospital or a treatment, you have to do that. So I would like to know in this, what are all the upgrades and innovations that took place during this pandemic, and what more breakthroughs can we expect in the future?
Right. So no, thank you for making me part of the panel. And rightly you said, I think the diagnostic is not the most fanciest thing, but I think is the most integral part of the healthcare. And I think what we have found in the COVID, obviously, then everybody pretty much have, either their family or their loved ones have actually gone through a RT-PCR testing and doing that testing at home. So I think the most fundamental change we have seen is that the diagnostic has now moved from the collection center, going and queuing up in the clinic and giving the blood sample, but actually doing it at home. And I think that's sort of a massive mind shift, which I think nobody would have imagined would have happened. And I think everybody have tasted that now you could actually, not only from a preventive body check packages, you can actually start doing your reactive or prescribed diagnostic at home. And I think at Reclave, I think we have taken that very seriously just prior to the COVID, but then the COVID actually, I think whatever we would have seen 5-6 years down the line have happened now. And therefore the industry is quite also changing, saying what are the tools and technology required for me to start managing 1,000 phlebotomists in NCR. So what Zomato and Swiggy were doing for the food delivery, I think this is what Redcliffe is doing for the diagnostic, saying you stay at home, tell us your prescription, we'll collect the sample, we have a lab in that city, and we'll give you the results in 1 hour time. And the ability for us to then start engaging, looking from a lifetime value perspective, commercially saying, if I've actually tested for you this, I would also like to test you for other things as well going forward. But also I like to discuss with you various preventive thing, wellness, allergies, vitamin, pretty much everything. And I think what we are trying to make is a larger awareness on the preventive side, saying not only when you discover the disease and do a test, even before that, you can do lots of different things. And Reclave, with our product portfolio of genetic and genomic testing all the way then to basic routine, I think that sort of helps. So that is from a consumer perspective. But what is also happening largely from, I think pathology is changing. So we talk about general transferring of imaging of histopathology online and then getting reviewed by pathologists remotely or by actually having an expert pathologist wherever he's sitting, getting that consultation happening online. Obviously, that's something very, very different. Complete automation, like from what's happening in the lab, is obviously complete automation of track and bidirectional barcoded, running all the samples, then use of a lot of AI, which can start reviewing and suggesting more precise evaluation done by pathologists. Earlier was kind of more generalized. So I think generally the more and more data you're collecting, feeding into the AI ML platform and then coming back with something more precision-based medical diagnostic. And then specifically that, understanding that specific profile of that consumer actually, and then finding that out and giving, obviously the more prescribed or more precise view on the test. I think that's something is completely different. And then this is what we're sort of seeing in the last 2-3 years happening. But for us also from a capital perspective, as clearly Gautam mentioned, I think healthcare have never seen that kind of capital flowing in. And I think most of the large investors are actually now seeing, they're seeing education, fintech. But what in the health tech, what are these companies who have genuinely have actually did something to improve the disease and the health outcome? And what are these industries available? And I think we clearly know that, the consultation, the leaders been identified, pharmacy leaders been identified, diagnostic and OPD treatment is sort of two spaces where no significant disruptions have happened. And that's what I think we are trying to take a little bit of that space, saying, let us disrupt diagnostic in a completely different way, not just doing home collection, but also now we are building the largest network of radiology as well. And clearly the capital is also helping us. I mean, and this is what is saying that, see what has happened to PharmEasy, a lot of consolidation, but still large consumer experience. I think similar thing will happen in diagnostic and, carrying on to understanding and improving the sort of the disease profile of that consumer. So the responsibility for diagnostic companies is actually far beyond than just diagnosing, because that's the consumer which you sort of take on board, and how do you actually work with them to do a lot of preventive thing, but then also kind of provide them various other services.
Thank you, Dheeraj. I like that part about preventive and AI, because I mean, seriously, if you had a new disease and people were, diagnosing themselves, then the AI would automatically be able to tell that there's a pandemic on the way. And I mean, like COVID-19, we were totally caught unawares. So let's hope, I mean, we can, have some sort of predictive thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I asked you about your specialities. I'd like to, throw open one more open question. So, which is the one technology that the government of India should promote to transform our healthcare system, and how? Because, I mean, everybody's doing their jobs. Hospitals have been working 24 hours, doctors, nurses, startups have been coming out of the solutions. We usually say, the government should do this, that. So from your point of view, what is that one thing that the government should do and promote in our healthcare system? You can go, anyone can go first.
So I think, as you rightly said, from an AI perspective, I think use of a lot of AI and technology interface, that to allow for speeding up the system and providing, all that remote review of reports and really that fast delivery to the patient and to the clinician. I think a lot of that technology. So kind of really promoting tech, because there will be clearly a shortage of technicians, a shortage of pathologists. And I think especially from remote villages, you can't have a centralized lab and district lab in that particular kind of pretty much in all the other locations as well. So I think kind of building that remote kind of interface and then using tech in the back of it, because, the amount of data we have, and then we come back with a understanding profiling of these people all over the sort of the country. And I think so a lot of tech is what I mean, we believe from a diagnostic perspective, I think government can actually help encouraging the ecosystem.
I would say most important is telemedicine. Government is anyway taking up several initiatives, eSanjeevani. We need to have battery of experts backing up this infrastructure, and doctors being available for the consultation, reaching out to remote villages everywhere. At least preliminary care should be available to all at minimum cost, minimum disruption. And the infrastructure build-up that is happening around telecommunication will certainly enable that. The other, that as Dheeraj said, we are now at an inflection point of several very interesting developments. We have been talking about CDSS, clinical decision support systems. Now we are going to talk about PDSS, pathologist decision support system, radiologist decision support system, and then actually confluence of pathology and radiology coming together, all the images being stored in same packs, being analyzed. Probably AI helping the selection of the right test, which gives best value to the patient at that moment, whether biopsy is required or MRI is required or CT is required, which one test is good enough to diagnose the problem accurately and without any more intervention than required.
So, Sunil, in my view, I think the government has to assume a more overarching role to be able to provide the right ecosystem for all of this to function. There's unfortunately no one thing that will solve this whole situation we find ourselves in. I think the biggest role the government has to play is to be able to increase significantly the expense that is dedicated towards healthcare. I think there was a good step made in the last budget, but it's still awaited to see how the execution of that expense is going to get implemented. And I mean, when you compare it to any other country, I think it's abysmal what actually the expenditure on healthcare is made. And to the point that Dwivedi and Dheeraj also made, I think for me, why COVID, I mean, fortunately not as significant an impact in some of the other countries, but the floodgates unfortunately were open because the primary healthcare in our country is not equipped necessarily as much as it should be. So when the second lockdown happened, I was part of this movement called Mission Oxygen, and it was heartrending to see that basic infrastructure was completely lacking in smaller cities. I'm not even talking about remote India; these are smaller cities in our country. I think they have, before this, of course, technology will have to be a part of this. Telemedicine will have to be part of it, remote monitoring and everything else. But the government needs to do big things, and we are there to support them in terms of the endeavors and initiatives we all are taking to be able to accomplish that goal of making healthcare more inclusive. But for that, a lot more expense has to be dedicated towards healthcare. And I would think primary healthcare needs to become a core focus for the government to sort out in our country. Otherwise, COVID or similar things are not far away again.
Okay, thank you for those views. So I'd like to ask one thing, if you look at like, say, we need an integration and unification in this industry, like Aadhaar was a unification of the identification process that streamlined everything. The RBI is planning an account aggregator network by which all, lending and borrowing will be centralized. But, that is one thing which has been seriously lacking in this industry for many reasons, because, medical records are in various forms. They are in MRIs, X-rays, paper, and even it's a very sensitive issue. Who owns the record? Does hospital own it? Does the patient own it? But still, it would help if we had a centralized health system. So I just want to know how that is possible, and like from your respective point of views, like whichever industries you are, how do you think this integration can be achieved, and maybe how your industry can get integrated into that?
So very first thing is we talk same language. And by language, I don't mean English or Hindi or Kannada. We should be talking of diseases in the same language. Codification. Have probably SNOMED CT, ICD, or whatever is the standard across the country. The standard for documentation should be set. And then the healthcare provider or even the application software service provider should be allowed to stay only if they are compliant to certain norms. See, HL7 or FHIR standard should be there. And a copy of the health record should be available in the central repository and should be accessed by anyone, just like GSTN. That is how we will proceed. And finance industry has really set the precedents. And they have actually shown the way how to move towards. I think government is already taking steps. We are talking of the Universal Health ID, and NDHM has the roadmap. We are talking about the repository or registries of physicians, providers, facilities. So all this will create the ecosystem.
And I'll tell you how, sorry.
No, I was just kind of echoing exactly, saying, the scheme which got launched some time back on the NDHM, I think it's a very, very big step. And, that's linking with Aadhaar and then eventually providing that unique digital ID. I think the moment all of that sort of start ramping up and that start eventually becoming a one-stop solution. And as Dr. Dwivedi has just said, having a not only just for ecosystem for doctors or for diagnostic companies or for medtech company, but I think also largely for policymaker as well. And we're looking, both from a modern medicine, preventive medicine, but then also looking all the other interventions of AI, ML. I think all of them start getting assembled together. And I think this is absolutely an amazing initiative. And I think everybody in the industry sort of start getting integrated through that. And there is no other way. I mean, there is no one single private body can actually enforce that. So I think this is a very, very big sort of building block towards that integrated healthcare.
So Sunil, for me, I come from the airline world, and there is this Amadeus and the global distribution system where you can plug in all data and relay it. Unfortunately, nothing like that existed in the healthcare industry, especially in India, because of the incentives of individual players. Private healthcare not really aligned, but I think the government is making the right steps, taking the right steps. I completely agree with both Mr. Dwivedi and Dheeraj that this interoperability of data is going to be complete. It's going to be the backbone. I'll take the use case of, for example, what we do, and just before the session started, Dwivedi ji and I were talking about it as well. That let's say for a person with who's diabetic and they're using Veto to be able to manage this condition, the evolution of the disease getting poured back into the healthcare provider system. Let's say in Mr. Dwivedi's case, if a patient is on chemo, certain and people have a tendency to have elevated sugar levels. If a provider like Veto could actually get, provide the data on the evolution of this condition of sugar levels to Dwivedi ji for carrying out the right intervention at their side, then the best of both worlds can come together. Because today we are looking at the patient in isolation. He's looking at, or his enterprise is looking, organization is looking at the patient in isolation. Dheeraj is carrying out, diagnostics. But there's no, like Dwivedi said, there's no one language that we are all talking at this point in time, and that will give us a tremendous fillip to all these four things that we spoke about in adoption, in engaging the patient more, so that adherence is a key element of any healthcare therapy, but it is compromised today. And finally, either prediction of future conditions or otherwise improving the outcomes of existing conditions that a person has will be successfully done.
Okay, so I think these are all good ideas. Let's hope that the government can implement some of them. Also,
We'll have to play a big role in it. So
that's what I mean. That
Yeah.
is all three of you.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear your views on what is the one big health tech idea is that's going to transform Indian healthcare. Since the theme is transformation, just pick one technology or maybe one big idea that is going to transform Indian healthcare in the 2020s.
So Sunil, I'm biased. It is going to be B2.
So maybe you can elaborate on that. What exactly?
Yeah, so I think, for me, when I look at it, and this is Vito is of course born from a personal pain point. We've seen diabetes and its complications at close quarters personally. But when I start, and we've been to homes of patients who unfortunately suffer from complications arising out of this condition. The fact that we are having late diagnosis, not only in diabetes, but late diagnosis for most chronic conditions, where we're missing these windows of either reversal or being able to avoid these complications, is the root cause of where we find ourselves, in terms of, when COVID happens, people unfortunately passing away, not because of COVID, but, comorbidities. So technologies and solutions that allow us to be able to reach the masses, first of all. So it has to be extremely affordable technology. It cannot be something that is, for 1 or 2% of India, because they have access to care anyway. So it has to be extremely cost-effective technology that can get into every household practically, and is able to predict and intervene in real time to give the right information to the individual in terms of the course correction they need, either this be through their prescription or lifestyle adaptation or what have you. But everything needs to be done before then it's getting done today in India, which I believe is the root cause of where we find ourselves. So technology that is cost effective, getting into as many households, is able to predict. Focus for me, of course, on NCDs, because those are going to be the everlasting epidemics. Should be the winner for India.
So, Sunil, from my point of view, I would rather like to look at the horizon. What is spreading in the country? Most prevalent cardiac cases. Blood pressure of the country is rising altogether. Second is, we are becoming more sweeter and sweeter. The diabetes is increasing for India as a country. Then cancer, that is also one menace that is really increasing. And in some cases like NCR, the lung problems are increasing. So if you look at all these problems and volume and category of the problems, I think before Dheeraj takes off, I will still say minimum intervention in the diagnostics, minimum expenditure, maximum spreading of the knowledge, awareness. These are certain key areas that we as a country should focus. Let us do health care rather than health repair that we do in the hospitals.
Absolutely amazing. I think very spot on. I think the last line, and I think if we start working towards care and less repair, I think we'll be completely different world. And clearly the amount of lifestyle and the stress, as you rightly said, I mean, all of these diseases could be prevented if we can sort of adjust that lifestyle. And I think that comes through larger awareness. I think the new generation Z, Alpha are very different. I mean, they consume less alcohol, they smoke less. I mean, these are the kind of trend we are seeing. It's a completely different way that how the millennials have come up and how they grew up and what they have been doing. So I think a great opportunity for the younger kind of guys to also drive the larger adoption of on the preventive side of things. And then clearly, as you all said, and I think what we have found that for diagnostic industry as well, it's a bit of shock that the collection center or the patient walk-in center are not anymore the fancy thing to build. It's actually that everything is happening through home. So even Gautam, for you, that device of finding that sugar or various data on that and using that consumable again and again, all of that is shifting. That care is shifting to home, and we think that it's a completely different landscape for at least for the diagnostic industry. And then clearly, as we were talking about the government thing, I think if we can get this consistent EMR, I think that is really the game changer. I mean, India have huge amount of telephone connection, internet connection, mobile. We are the most consuming, biggest in Facebook. Pretty much, I think we have all of the digital adoption. Why not to have these records? And I think these records would have, I think all of us, Dr. Dwivedi, Gautam and us, we can do our job much, much nicely. Obviously providing that amazing experience, but also then kind of think about large technology, which could never come to India. Like I've been promoting genetic testing, genetic sequencing for last 3.5 years. Very expensive, cannot get to a mainstream because awareness is not there. And then also very inconsistent how people understand and how it's sold actually as well. So I think new advanced technology will come once the fundamentals are in place. And I think that's what we would think that to happen. So India is more of an execution rather than innovation. And I think if we can get our execution right all together of us, then I think we're probably in a different India.
So Sunil, if I can just maybe just add to that what Dheeraj said, because I think the core of the problem, and you compare us to the West, the whole outpatient care in India is out of pocket. People pay for it. So nobody is at the healthcare system at the core of it. And, Dwivediji's idea of care before repair is perfect. But unfortunately, our healthcare system is not incentivized to take care of people before they need repair. Unfortunately, most of the monetization actually happens when a person is at the hospital. So that has to be altered. And like we said, the government has to play a significant role in ensuring that, this outpatient care somehow can get paid not by the individual, but by the system somehow. And the healthcare system is incentivized to take care of people, to take Dwivedi's words, and not necessarily just repair people.
So,
absolutely. So I think we all need to devise an incentive system towards a healthy society.
Yeah. So, one theme that is coming out is of prevention. And as you said, care, not repair. So I just want to know, like, how prepared are we in the future? Like, when the Spanish flu came, obviously there was no technology. They were totally caught unawares and they couldn't change much. Again, but it is so sad to say we are so technologically advanced and we don't have a shortage of money, but still we were caught unawares. So I'm just wondering, and already this coronavirus, it used to be a cold, then you had SARS, then you had MERS. So it is mutating fast. So I'm just wondering, are we ready for the next pandemic, or will we be caught unawares? And if so, what are the technologies that we can develop to actually, prevent such a pandemic? Because see, if a pandemic is coming, we'll not be able to stop it, but we can definitely check its arrest. So I'd like to hear you on the technologies. Sure, Dheeraj.
Let me take this very quickly, and then I think there's a lot more from my co-panelists. So, we were one of the first one in India to propose to the Health Ministry of doing genetic sequencing of the virus and having that genetic profile, and then keeping a very close eye on the regular to understand the mutant behavior, but then also finding out if there's any even submutants happening in this virus profile in the stack of this SARS-CoV, as you mentioned. I think improving this largely to the whole base of sequencing as much as possible. I think that also from a mainstream perspective, I think it started taking some shape where people realize, sequencing is not something very fancy. It is sort of very, very fundamental. So I think that clearly that infrastructure, I think India have now. It had before, but it even have it at a very different capacity. So we could keep profiling, we could keep finding, all of these. But if we can know a little bit more about it in advance, and clearly, I mean, no virus tells before it's coming, right? I mean, this is complete sort of surprise. Even the new mutants will continue to come. And therefore, I think doing this backend, the profiling and sequencing, at least from our perspective, that has been very helpful, and that continue to be very helpful even in the other countries. And then obviously, all the other things from a teleconsultation, home diagnostic, all of that continues. We'll sort of react to that later on. Yeah.
Let us look at the positive side. When have we seen that disease came in the existence or became known to the world in December 2019, and by March the test was available, and within a year vaccine was available to the entire world. It takes decades to build a vaccine. So really we stood up as a universal community, as this world. We actually did a pretty good job if we look at it positively. And now we are talking about having some sort of treatment also. I don't know how far we have succeeded or how soon we are going to. But I agree with Dheeraj. I think the genetic sequencing holds the key.
I resonate with thoughts of both Dheeraj and Deveti ji. I think we need to keep looking at positives to keep encouraging us and motivating us to, building on the successes. This was no small feat that the world accomplished together, whether it was coming up with the test, vaccines. Look at so many people who've gone through COVID after the vaccines, and there has been practically no symptom. And all of this has been achieved in the last year and a half, right? So I think technologies will continue to evolve to be able to better predict such circumstances so that, early detection and early prevention procedures and protocols can be rolled out. I think we're much smarter. I would look at it from, in the rear view mirror. I think we're all a lot smarter about how to be able to tackle such situations if they were to arise. We're also much smarter going forward to be able to predict such circumstances from not arising, or if they arise, then averting the complications that come with it. Of course, it will have to be also, the onus is on the individual as well to be able to, prevent such things to, really scale up the way they did. You still see people, at least in Delhi, completely taken off their masks and moving around. So I think the basic hygiene protocols will continue to be, the onus has to be on us. And again, all of this boils down to the immune system and lifestyle that all of us will lead. So all the technologies that are coming in, the innovations are coming in to make people healthier, stronger, better, will negate some of this impact that might come in the future as well. So yeah, I think we're all much better prepared and smarter than before.
So I think on that positive note is a good place to end the panel discussion. We can go on forever. So I would like to thank the three of you, because I think in such a short time we have discussed so many ideas, and these are great ideas which are workable. So I guess now we just have to go and implement these ideas. And I'm sure that, Indian healthcare, it was a crisis, but it's going to be a great healthcare system in the 2020s. I'm hopeful, and I'd like thank you all of you for giving your ideas and views.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank
All
you.
the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to thank all the panelists for such an engrossing discussion.